Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hope everyone is doing well. We are back another week with just some quickly weekly roundups and discussion of what's been happening, what uh, obviously has been shipping up in the news, and anything else that we can share beyond in that instance. Um, Obviously, I think the top news that's been playing much in everyone and anyone's mind all across has been pretty much about the COVID situation. So things are evolving, things are changing across a number of different areas and regions. Things are enhancing or getting better in some parts of the world, but obviously some of the variants that we've seen recently, especially the Delta variant, as it has been called quite frequently, is creating a bit of a mayhem in different parts of the world. But there is again expectation and hope that things tend to improve over the coming weeks, and the vaccination rates and the people who are double vaccinated in that instance, not even just the first jab, but properly vaccinated across both vaccinations that have been offered to a number of people, start to take shape, and we see a slight degree of improvement in in a way the situation overall. Cases started to drop, um, and we don't see the mortality or the hospitalization rates that many people have been fearing will get worse over time. Obviously, I think the big talking point, especially in UK over the recent weeks, has been around football. So that's also something that's growing up more and more. Um, and closer to we get to Sunday, obviously that's going to take a bit of an impact in that regard as well. Some of the other things that have been happening, obviously, I think there's lots building up in across the world, and one of the key things that is obviously coming back as quite an important factor in the recent weeks has been what the future of traveling might be. Um, Many firms in UK, especially linked to the travel industry, hospitality industry, they feel that the government restrictions and the travel lists that have been identified and introduced over the last few months have been creating a bit of a headache for many businesses. One day there is a country that is announced either in one category and then it is recategorized very soon into another. Uh, that obviously creates a bit of an issue and impact on how these firms are able to plan, build up their plans, or build up their any kind of future investment strategies, even if they have to in that regard. So that's always a challenge for the airline and the travel businesses. And we can see Ryanair, BA, and some of the other ones have now taken legal action in a way to basically bring this requirement in front of the government that they need to have more transparency in their decision making, and in a way how the countries are reclassified into different lists, what kind of COVID threat example data has been factored in, and how this can be improved or better made transparent for the firms to know better so that they are able to better advise all their customers in the long run as well. So now these companies obviously are going to take a bit of a legal action. So we'll see how that shapes up and what kind of impact does it create on the overall side of the businesses and the government as well. So that's obviously shaping up, and we will see how this continues to be a factor. We will hopefully see more and more clarity, transparency that is being brought in by the government as well as from the businesses who are obviously operating under the guidelines provided by the government to understand better and then shape up how things can get better in the future in that instance. Um, well, then I think one thing that obviously the top thing that many people have been following and quite closely following obviously is the football. And first time in more than 55 years since 1966 when the English football team, the men's football team, was in the final at Wembley and obviously won that World Cup. This is the first time that any of the English men squads or teams since the last 55 years have qualified to a final at any major tournament, whether it's the World Cup or the Euros. So this year, again, it's quite a special one. I think the Euros were delayed from last year when they were supposed to happen in 2020, but because of the coronavirus situation, they were not able to be organized. So this year, they've been spread across different countries in Europe, 11 different countries. And now, after 55 years, England's team has reached the final, which they are going to play on Sunday with Italy. So it's going to really become a quite a hotly contested match in my view, because Italy has been playing some really beautiful football, and England has been obviously gaining confidence over the last few weeks. While they have pretty much played across a number of different teams, the one against Germany, that was quite a remarkable win for Germany, for England, as a 2-0 scoreline. This is going to be an interesting match on Sunday, and pretty much across UK and London and anywhere else, as we've been hearing and seeing across news and different things. People are really excited, and they are really looking forward to the match, and how this shapes up is going to pretty much decide the national mood, I would say, for the many weeks to come. So this is going to be an interesting encounter, while England is going to have the first final in 55 years. And obviously, they're going to see a lot of interest from new fans, from people who have been following football, um, and people who obviously live in England and UK in general. So it's going to be a highly interesting weekend for many folks in that regard. Um, One thing, obviously, I think linked to Euro has been the focus by a number of different football organizers across the world, including the UEFA, as it is known, the European Football Association, of really tackling hate, racism in sport. And one of the most visually, in a way, strong reminders of how the players and everyone else involved with the football is really committing to create that equal opportunity scope for different people, is the players taking the knee before any match. So you can see Jack Grealish and Calvin Phillips in this picture, that every before the start of every match, essentially, many players have been going down their knee in solidarity with the anti-racism protests, or in solidarity with the kind of idea that sports should be bringing equality all across. And it was also started back in 2016 by Colin Kaepernick, who took a knee during the national anthem of US, claiming that he cannot stand up and honor everything in that regard, as things are evolving and changing in the US, and how the race relations and the issues in the country have been impacting the general mood and the audiences in that regard. So obviously, I think that's a continued issue at Euros as well. Many of the players have taken a knee. Many of the crowds have been getting involved. Some people have appreciated it. Some people have spoken against it. That this is a case of bringing politics in a way to sports. But this is obviously an interesting trajectory that we have to see how things shape up in the coming weeks around Europe. Um, Moving on, I think one of the COVID stories, obviously, as many of you might have seen, is that the number of infections have been really going higher and higher. It actually crossed 30,000 quite recently. And now the Office of National Statistics, ONS, has been reporting that the latest data is suggesting that every person in 160 people, one in every 160 people, now actually have COVID. And this is up from one in every 250 people last week. So this is really, really, I think, high number of cases coming through. And obviously, I think 99% of the cases are coming through of Delta variant, which means that it has really spread across the most of the people in the country as well. But again, I think the vaccinations and as you can see, that around 2/3 of the adults have now been double jabbed, in a way that they've had double vaccinations. So the rate of hospitalization and the mortality rate has been really on the lower end, luckily, and hence it is not creating such a massive issue. which hopefully is going to remain the same. Um, the, the government has obviously announced that they are going to go ahead in terms of easing out all restrictions on 19th of July. So the final step of unlocking, as it is known, that most of the rules will end on the 19th of July. Face masks will not be required, social distancing rules will be scrapped, and obviously all the rules of work from home, guidance, and 6 people inside private homes will be taken off in that instance. So I think it's going to be quite a change, as we all know that it is, in a way, the government is really banking on the vaccinations that have been provided across the country now, so that it can reopen the economy, it can reopen the country, it can reopen the hospitality, travel, and all the other segments that are linked to the restrictions that have been in place for the last 16 odd months now. So it's going to be quite a change. It's going to be different from 19th of July onwards, but we obviously can expect and hope that things tend to improve and things tend to get better as the coming week. Beyond that, I think the obviously in North America and Canada, there's been a lot of discussion about the heat wave. That has been quite a massive difference in the temperatures. Now, is this saying that it has been the warmest June on record as since the records began? Basically, that the heat in North America and Canada was so severe that many people actually lost their lives as well. So it's quite a shocking change, as you would imagine, especially in Western Canada, as you can see that temperatures went really, really higher, up to even 15 degrees higher than the normal temperatures that are seen as an average in that scope. So it's quite, I think, a different scope on things, and it's problematic in that instance. But again, we hope and pray that things tend to improve and people do not suffer from the calamity of harsh temperatures. And we see improvements coming through and through. And hopefully things do not deteriorate further in that instance and people are able to recover as well. Some of the other things, I think, as many of you might have heard and seen about the Suez Canal blockade, the ship that went sideways in the Suez Canal, Ever Given. It was stuck. It was then held back, obviously, for the last 3 months, so that all the kind of disruptions and everything else can be worked out, and the compensation of disruption can be worked out between the Egyptian government and the owners of the fleet. So obviously, I think the settlement has finally been reached out. It's been since the last 3 months, just being held in the Suez Canal. They haven't been able to work out something else, and then I think in a way that this is in any sense in a way that this is quite a different area, as you guys have seen all the images that have been coming out and all the different things that has been happening in Suez Canal. So now that finally the ship is free, finally the ship that was in the Ismaili airport is leaving, and people are hoping that it doesn't block or the blockades do not continue in the future at any point in time, because a single blockade in the Suez Canal can have a greater impact across all of ocean traffic. And many of the impacts are kind of something that reverberates across economics, in the financial markets, and even beyond, essentially. So hopefully that doesn't happen in the future again, or we might see this repeat of this blockade that has impacted so many different things on the wider scale as well. Some of the, I think, obviously, as things that are improving to a certain degree, we can see, I think, in China, I was reading this report that many of you might be well aware that pandas have been considered as endangered species for a while now. But now there's a lot of growth in the population of pandas in the world. And finally, China has stated that they are no more classified as endangered. but they are still vulnerable. But hopefully there are now a number of pandas in the world, and the growth rate have really substantially recovered enough to have this species to continue in the future as well, which is good news because, as we know, many of the plant and animal species have been becoming extinct because of the impact of climate change, because of the impact of man-made errors, and some of the things that have been happening in the nature as well. So it's good to see that pandas at least are surviving all these changes, and there isn't any significant impact coming through in that regard. Over in Bangladesh, I think quite a sad story developing. Factory caught fire. More than 50 people have been killed. More than 50 people lost their lives in this factory fire. It was a plastics and chemicals factory. And again, because of the proximity of populations, the way fire services are managed, and I think the way different building standards are met in that part of the world, in Pakistan, in India, and Bangladesh, any even minor incident causes a lot of damage. And I think this is something we should all consider and think about on how it can be improved and how we can really work together to bring these standardized approaches of safety and health and safety regulatory elements that can be introduced all across the world. Otherwise, even minor incidents, as I mentioned, will end up with a lot of losses of life all across. And this is something that is obviously not to be appreciated in that instance, that a single person losing their life creates a big hole for all across the family, friends in the wider circle in that instance. So in Bangladesh, I think this sad story obviously developed, and we hope and pray that people who have lost their lives do find some degree of support from the government for their families and everything else in the wider sense. So that's some quick updates on things that have been happening, some things that have been shaping up. Today, our friend Brother Nizam, he's taken up with some work, so he won't be able to join today. So we'll keep it to 15-20 minutes as just a quick overview of things that are happening and shaping around the world. And then inshallah, from tomorrow, we will continue with the normal scope of discussions tomorrow with the book club discussions we have for tomorrow. Then again on Monday, we'll have the Tajweed classes. On Tuesday, the Sira. On Wednesday, the travel. On Thursday, the Arabic classes. And then next Friday, inshallah, we'll continue with the weekly roundup. So Jazakallah khair for watching today. Just a very quick roundup of updates from many different areas and parts of the world. And we'll inshallah continue this in the future and hope to see you all very soon again. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.